Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Across the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com, where you'll find the audio-only live stream, social media links, and, of course, links to the podcast as well, and broadcasting across the state of Alaska on terrestrial radio. Just good old-fashioned terrestrial radio on your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning to you. It is the Michael Dukes Show. Hi, how are you? You ready for Tuesday? Let's jump into it, shall we? Let's jump into it and get started this morning talking about all the things that are important. Today is Tuesday, which is our normal day to talk about what we like to call the weekly top three, which are the top three items that are important, according to our friend Brad Keithley, who is the founder and director of Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. He comes in to talk with us today about those top three items, and today is no different. Today, we are going to dive into it and talk with him, about the new campaign slogan that he thinks that Bill Walker should take up. And then, of course, dodging the question of who pays all the bills and all the different programs that we're talking about here in the state during this election season. And finally, the new messaging that appears to be gelling around many of the campaigns, which has to do primarily with the cost of education and the fact that we should be paying more for education in the state because that is the only way to save us all. It's the only way to save us all. So we're going to be diving into that and talking with Brad Keithley about this this morning. And we're looking forward to seeing what you guys have to say as well into hour two. We'll probably take some phone calls at the beginning of hour two to talk about Brad's comments and thoughts. And then in hour two, at the end of hour two, we'll be talking with Chris Story, the man from Homer, who will come on board and give us a little bit of an uplift, a little bit of a life coaching lesson, a little bit of good stuff. So that's kind of the that's kind of the fair round this morning of all the things that we're going to be talking about and going over. Want to say thank you this morning and remind folks that this hour of the program is being brought to you by your friends over there at Satellite West. You can find them at satellitewest.com. Satellite West, of course, the premier place to go for any kind of communication need here in the state of Alaska. If you're looking to stay connected, whether it's out in the Prince William Sound area, or if it's way up towards Anaktuvik, wherever you are, if you need to send an email or a text or make a phone call or surf the internet, the people at Satellite West have got the technology to keep you connected, regardless of where you are. And they are the ones that can do that. They're the experts. So find out more about them at satellitewest.com. Special thanks to them for sponsoring this hour of the program today as we continue on and discuss all the good stuff that we got going on this morning. All right. So I've got a few headlines that I'm going to go over, and some of this is going to be a little bit of a tease for what Brad's going to be talking about, because a couple of these articles are specifically some of the things that Brad is sourcing his opinion from this morning. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Before we get into this, though, I had to laugh because, well, I'd have to laugh because otherwise I'd cry. Ira Samuels over at the ADN has got a new article up this morning talking about how the U.S. House candidates are continuing to claw and bite and rend and chew on each other, all while urging everybody to rank the red. The two Republican candidates continuing to just bash at each other, all while assuming that this is going to do the job and get Democrat Representative Mary Peltola out of office. That's kind of the whole point here. This article gives a little bit of back and forth between the two campaigns, highlighting them and the messaging that they've been putting forward. And it's let's just say it's not been pretty. Let's just say that it's just definitely not a not fantastic. Now, it does touch on the Patriot Freedom Pack rally that was held at the Denina Center this weekend, highlighting the fact that there was almost no one there. And again, I don't know why. I don't know why there was almost no one there, but it did happen. Then it breaks down into the actual talking about the ranked choice voting itself. And I see part of the problem, and I had seen we'd seen some discussions on this early on. This whole framework that the Alaska Republicans had come up with that basically said, look, whoever you vote for, make sure you rank the red. Make sure that you rank the red so that we don't get a blue wave. But in the article, it says, before the August special election, Palin told voters that she only ranked herself. Her message, she said, was, don't comply. Do not comply. But since her loss in the special election, Palin has adapted her message to her supporters to include that while she continues to view ranked choice voting negatively, she says it's a kooky system, wonky system, she must operate with, quote, in the cards that they have been dealt. So, okay. I mean, at least we've got that where they're saying that they're going. I mean, that's the thing. When you look at each other and go, oh, she's horrible. Oh, he's horrible. Oh, she's horrible. Oh, no, he's horrible. But whatever you do, vote for both of us. You guys are not helping. You're just not helping. You're not helping the situation. Part of the campaigning is what Nick Begich called this kind of give and take. After the candidate forum on Monday, Begich responded to criticism from Palin's campaign regarding his negative campaigning, saying it was about sharing his opponent's record. We're going to talk about records, Begich said. That's part of campaigning. Well, and while, again, I support Nick Begich as a candidate, I think he's great. I mean, I'm voting for Chris By to begin with, but, that's just me because I'm contrary and you can't tell me what to do. And I find it ironic that Iris doesn't mention one thing in this article about, except for that Chris By was in attendance at this meeting. She doesn't mention any of his policies. I know he doesn't have a chance. He's in fourth place. Why even bother? Because I can. That's why. damn it. That's why, because I can. Anyway, you get into this whole thing about we're talking about records, and that's part of campaigning. You could talk about somebody's records without going full on negative, attack dog negative. I mean, that's just the way it is. Now, Begich did talk about that he's still in a position to emerge victorious from the House race by convincing some Palin voters to switch and by appealing to voters who did not vote in the special election but intend to vote in the regularly scheduled November election. Results of the special election indicated that in a head-to-head race, Begich would have beaten Peltola where Palin had lost. Both Palin and Begich had a lot of either exhausted ballots, meaning there were bullet ballots, one and done, right? They voted for one candidate and done. But Begich had a surprising number. 23,000 people voted for Peltola in the second round. And God, just stop fighting with each other. Can you just stop fighting with each other? You want a Democrat to be Congresswoman? That's how you get a Democrat to be Congresswoman. You don't put aside your differences. And I mean, you can still talk about the differences in your policies or your philosophies and everything else without attacking and just chipping away at people. It turns people off. It turns people off. Now, Nick Begich did say something that I thought was interesting. Now, the problem is that the way he said it comes across as kind of an attack, but I'm going to read it because I think it really struck me as important. He said, for most people that I speak with, they're looking for someone who's serious about the state of Alaska, not someone who's going to bring a James Brown impersonator from Chicago and do backflips on the stage. Apparently that was a thing on Sunday. People who are actually going to work hard to solve the problems of Alaska. Now, that's an interesting comment, but what he really said next was what got my attention. We have to stop thinking about politics like political entertainment. This is one of the big problems that we've experienced as a nation for the last decade, that politics have become entertainment. That degrades our opportunity to govern properly, to represent our people properly. It takes the arguments that are cogent and throws them out the window for dancers and singers and entertainers. That's not going to fix the problems that we have in this country. Now, I could have gotten behind that entire statement and let it sit on its own instead of pointing out the fact that Palin had brought up the dancers and the singers and done all that kind of stuff. I mean, again, that would have been an example of how you could talk about these things without attacking the opponent. It's crazy. Now, what's interesting is that Mary Peltola gets the final word in this article, that Palin had not appeared at this Monday forum at the Chamber of Commerce. She had appeared in a video message, but she did not participate in the debate, while Chris By and Mark Begich and Mary Peltola did. Peltola via Zoom. But Palin's recorded message said something about people wanting to turn Alaska into a big national park, and they don't care about the economy, and things that I probably could get around and get on board with. But Peltola appeared to directly respond to the Palin's message in her message to the forum, where she said, I'm not one to beat up on the federal government. It seems like Alaska's favorite sport. I'm not sure why people run for a federal seat if they just want to make it sound like the federal government is out to get us. Mary, the reason why people run for a federal seat is because they are beating up on the federal government and they want to make those changes so that we're not being pursued or beat down by the federal government. That's pretty obvious. I mean, that's kind of a dismissive comment to people who, yes, I want to criticize the federal government and their handling of things in the state of Alaska, and I want to join and run for federal seat so that we can make a difference and change that. I don't see how that's really hard to understand, but it just becomes this very dismissive, I don't know why you're complaining about it and then wanting to be part of it. Oh, why would you do that? Anyway, this is an interesting piece in the ADN. I will post it up in the chat room so that people can take a look at it and do it to it. Somebody on YouTube just said it's Nick Begich, not Mark Begich. If I said Mark Begich, I apologize. Freudian slip. Nick Begich is who I was talking about this whole time, was Nick Begich. What? Ooh, I didn't even get a chance. I wanted to get into this thing about Bill Walker, but I guess, you know what? We'll have to do this. We'll have to do this along with Brad. How about that? We're going to jump into this and take a quick break. And when we come back, we will continue. Brad Keithley, our guest, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. It is the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll return in just a moment with Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Don't go anywhere. Back with more right after this.
What is that?
Common sense. Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Duke Show. Radio.
Yeah, exactly. Angie brings up the valid point. I mean, if you want to attack somebody, you should be attacking Peltola. If you double team Peltola on her positions, you probably could make some headway. No one is talking about Peltola's positions. They're just attacking each other. Keep it up and she'll win. I mean, that's exactly it. I mean, that is exactly it. I mean, it's just, yeah. They're killing, again, circling the wagons and shooting inward. Just absolute. And there's a whole thing in that article. You can read about this article where at one point Jerry Ward said he sat down with Truman Reed. Jerry Ward is with the Paling campaign, and he sat down with Truman Reed, the chair of the Begich campaign, and asked him to stop doing the messaging. And they said, well, they would think about it. And then Truman said, well, no, I don't know what you're talking about. And then said, well, we did have a meeting, but I mean, you guys just stop, for the love of God. Could you just stop? Seriously. You're not helping anyone except Mary Peltola. So much ego involved in this whole thing. It's astonishing to me. All right. We'll continue on here. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, is in the green room, ready to participate at a high level here. He's going to wow us with his presentation and his thoughts this morning. Let's get him going on. Hello, my friend. How are you this morning?
Michael, good morning. How are you?
My God, son, why are you so exuberant this morning? Let me turn this down a little bit. How's everything going?
It's going great. I'm out in Cape Breton, and I'm enjoying some music and some good food and having a good time.
I figured you were at the music festival. That's the big. This is the annual thing, right?
It is. Celtic Colors International Music Festival, and it goes 10 days, and it's got international as well as Cape Breton musicians, and it's a wonderful time.
You can't beat it. Everybody needs a little bit of salve for their soul, right?
And I just want to mention that at the inn I'm staying at, I sat down to breakfast yesterday and met a couple from Sitka, Alaska, who are up here for the festival. So it's not just for New Englanders and East Coasters. It's truly an internet. And there's another couple from Australia. So it's truly an international festival.
That's awesome. That's amazing. So, I know there's a lot of good times when we get into the music and everything else. That's a lot of good time to be out there. And again, soothing the savage beast within our soul. That's kind of what it's all about. Yeah. Well,
and it's beautiful here too. I mean, it's beautiful. It's called Celtic Colors because it's during the period of time when the trees are turning. So think Maine. What you know about New England and fall in New England. Think about that on steroids.
Gold and russet and red and all the beautiful colors and everything.
And I've got all that outside that window right there. So if I start staring outside that, staring there.
But okay, we've got colors here too. It's just I look outside and it's all white. It's white Like snowing so hard yesterday. I took some video and it was just like these big flakes. It must have been about, size of a 50-cent piece falling from the sky. And I'm just like, wow,
I can't.
I'm not ready for it. Not ready for it.
I can't say I'm sorry to miss first snow and miss
No.
all the drivers readjusting to
Yeah.
first snow on the roads.
Yeah, it was starting to snow last night when I left Anchorage, and I got home pretty early yesterday. I got home about 4:00 or 4:30, and then it really started to snow. And about half hour later, my wife said, "Well, there's already a pickup truck in the ditch there, Mayor Muldoon. They're already announcing it." So, yeah, people totally forget how to drive on this stuff. So I'm not looking forward to the drive-in this morning.
Yeah, I'll leave that to everybody that's there. I'll pick it up when I get back.
No, I'm with you on that. All right. Well, Harold is complaining that we're having too much fun having social hours. So now we've got to get on with the tax chat. That's what he wants. He wants to hear about the tax chat. So we're gonna.
Harold is amazing. He can complain about anything.
He can complain if he was hung with a new rope. Complain. All right, you ready to do this thing, Brad? Let's jump back into it. Here we go, folks. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like and share the show. Like and follow the show page. Here we go. All right, we're ready to dive into this. The weekly top three with Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. We apparently having way too much fun in the chat room during the commercial break because now we're supposed to knuckle down and get to it. Get to it. That's what it's all about. We've got Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets on board, and we're ready to chitty chat about all the stuff. Brad, this morning we're going to start off with your discussion on the new campaign slogan. You don't work for the Walker campaign, but you probably should for this new campaign slogan that you've come up with. And this is based off Bill Walker's piece in the Juneau Empire, or a piece about Bill Walker, rather, in the Juneau Empire. Go ahead and tell us, what is the new campaign slogan that Bill Walker should be using?
All right. So the campaign slogan that came to me as I was reading through this article is Bill Walker, I'm from the rich and I'm for the rich.
Right. Exactly. That's where I'm from and that's what I'm for.
Walker made a fortune suing the pipeline or suing the oil companies over taxes for years and years and years on behalf of the city of Valdez and other municipalities. And now he's using that fortune to protect the fortune and protect the rich as well. The piece that the segment of the Empire article that or the Empire interview with Mark Sabatini that Bill did that really got me, that really just got me jettisoned into this, is the following paragraph. Walker said his goal is to follow that approach, the POMV approach, to achieve a total fund value of $100 billion to $120 billion, which will be sufficient to fund state government from earnings and pay fair dividends on a sustainable basis. Everybody loves that word, sustainable.
Sustainable. Yeah. We keep using it. I'm not sure you know what it means.
Yeah, well, exactly. So the way you get to the 100 and 120 billion, I've been dealing with this issue for the past year as it's really surfaced as more and more a campaign mantra by various folks. The way you get to it is you cut PFDs now, so that you don't have to, cut government spending, or you don't have to, do taxes now. You cut PFDs down to the level where, sort of the government plus oil, or the POMV plus oil, takes care of government spending, and whatever's left over goes to the PFD. And then once you get to this nirvana where you've got $100 to $120 billion that's going to fund government in perpetuity, we're not going to have taxes. We're not going to be, at risk of oil tax changes or oil revenues or oil production. Once you get to this nirvana, you still have to cut PFDs in order to pay for government. You essentially are taking that number's calculated to get you about a $5 billion to $5.5 billion revenue flow, and that's what people think will We'll take care of UGF spending. We'll take care of government. So it's protect the rich now. Don't tax. Use PFD. Don't cut spending. Use PFD cuts now. Protect the rich. Don't have to get any contribution from the top 20%. When you get out to this nirvana of 120 billion, continue to protect the rich by continuing to cut the PFD, so you can use all of that POMV revenue flow to support government. I wrote a column. One of my columns for Landfield in the Alaska Landmine is titled "The Yuppie Version of Fiscal Responsibility." That's exactly what it is. It's the yuppies who visualize themselves, the young urban professionals, who visualize themselves as on their way to the top 20%. If they haven't quite made it yet, they're on their way to the top 20%. They're going to be in the top 20% after 2030 or 2032 or 2033 or somewhere out in the 2030s. You're going to achieve your top 20% status. You're willing to give up the PFD now to build up this fund, to build up the permanent fund to the point where you can get away without taxes once you're out there and you're in the 2030s and you're in the top 20% and you don't want taxes. So it's, for those who are already in the taxes now, those yuppies that are already in the top 20% now, it's great. They don't pay taxes now. They don't pay taxes in the future. They just sort of get a free ride, free government on the backs of middle and lower income Alaska families.
Right.
For those that aren't there yet, and I've encountered some and say, well, doesn't cutting the PFD cost you more than taxes would now? Yeah, but I'm going to be in the top 20%. So they view it sort of as a retirement fund, if you will, sort of as a mid-career subsidy for them once they get once they get into the top 20%, and then beyond that. And Walker has bought into it hook, line, and sinker. He's using that as the center point for his campaign. So basically what he's saying, I'm from the rich. I, Bill Walker, understand this because I'm rich. And I'm for the rich. I'm for the rich now because you guys don't have to pay taxes. Elect me. You don't have to pay taxes. We still get government. We still get all these goods and services that you've come to rely on, and some of you contract for. You get all these goods and services. Don't have to pay for it. We'll shove that on the backs of middle and lower income Alaska families. And I'm going to protect you out in the future. All you younger ones that are on your way, I'm going to protect you out in the future by continuing to go down this road and use PFD cuts to fund government. Essentially, use PFD cuts to fund government in the future as well. I can't begin to explain the frustration level I have when I hear young people talking about that, younger professionals talking about that. I mean, I don't think they understand. I think they see it as a nirvana, right? As right. Alaska is going to be this great state where the ideal of the nation.
It's all self-sustaining. It's all, we wouldn't have to do anything. We don't have to pay any taxes. We don't have to do, it'll all just be this utopian, glorified, whatever. What really struck me, Brad, about this whole article in the Juneau Empire, by the way, which I'll post in the chat room, but is this whole tone of the article where, I'm the martyr. So I threw myself on the permanent fund grenade and all this kind of stuff. And then the revisionist history that Sabatini writes into this when, Bill Walker said, well, I did this. And when I explained to people why I did it, they're like, oh, wow, you did it the right way. And then he goes on to say what the former Republican did as an independent governor from 2014 to 2018 was to lead the effort during the last year of his term to fund government by drawing money out of the permanent fund for the first time in its 40-year history. The plan drew opposition, yada, yada, yada. But that's not just what he did. If he had only just drawn money out of the earnings reserve, which was always allowable, it was always allowable to have money come out of the earnings reserve, but instead he cut Alaskans' dividends and left that money in the earnings reserve account while drawing money. So it's all disingenuous. It's all revisionist history. Oh, woe is me. Look at me. I took one for the team. That's why you should, because I'm the one that can get the. It's all Bert Stedman. The whole thing is just nothing but a big load of steaming stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Walker does have this self picture of himself that he was after he was unelected, after Dunleavy defeated him, Walker went out to Harvard and taught a course on independence and, and political independence and how they make their way in the world. And they can take the hard stands because they're not beholden to either side. And I did that in the last. Bill's built a picture of himself that is great for his top 20%, his top 5%, his top 1% support group. It's a wonderful picture for them. Look at what we did. We pulled off the coup of the century. We didn't have to pay a dime. We get to continue government spending, and we pulled it all off the backs of middle and lower income Alaska families. But that's his self-image. That's his self-picture. And that's how he portrays himself. That's how he portrayed himself at Harvard. That's why you have all that outside money that's supporting the Walker campaign, because he's the true independent. He's the one that, that stood up against the winds of the political parties and forced responsibility down the throat of Alaskans. He didn't force responsibility down the throat of Alaskans. He took money from middle and lower income Alaska taxpayers, from kids, and used it to support government spending to avoid touching the top 20%. That's what he did. And for him to paint a picture, a champion on the white horse, he's a champion on the white horse for the rich. I'm from the rich. I'm for the rich. But for 80% of Alaska families, for the overall Alaska economy, he did exactly the wrong thing. And he just refuses to stand up and say, well, there could have been some downside of this. It's just, keep on driving through.
Well, and as a side note, I noticed that Dragus got into the discussion at one point where they're talking about trying to bolster Alaska's economy and making the workforce work better. And then she said, well, we've got to fix some systemic problems if you want to build a workforce, and you've got to tackle affordable housing, which of course is code for we're going to provide more government housing, which, the whole thing I just look at this and my eyes cross when I think about this. It's insane. Final thoughts here on number one, Bill Walker's brand new campaign slogan.
Well, it's just a repetition. Walker is the candidate of the rich. Let's face up to that. He's the candidate of Kathy Giessel. He's the candidate of all of the Keep Alaska Competitive crew. Right. He's the candidate of the rich. And for any middle and lower income Alaska families concerned about themselves, concerned about their kids, concerned about Alaska's economic future, private economic future, you're going down the wrong road if you follow Bill Walker, because all he's going to do is he's going to keep feeding you this line and keep taking your money to make sure the top 20% don't have to contribute.
All right, let's go on to number two, the big question of who pays, and it appears that the Tax Foundation is dodging this question. They put out a tweet with a big article about the economic implications of the Alaska income tax or its alternatives and yada, yada, yada. Give us your thoughts on this right now.
Well, Alaska, the Tax Foundation comes at Alaska about once a year, and they come up with a big study. I don't know if that's Alaska Policy Forum that's behind that, or Alaska, the Koch affiliate here in Alaska that puts them up to it. But Tax Foundation, which is a fairly conservative national organization, comes up once a year with a study on Alaska. Last year, it was focused sort of the same way, a little bit different words, a little bit shorter, but sort of the same way, which is basically tax if you have to. You shouldn't really do it, but tax if you have to. And if you're going to tax, do a sales tax. Don't do an income tax. And when they talk about income tax, they talk about a progressive income tax. I want to get into a little bit of the nuance of that after we do the break, but they mostly talk about an income tax. The analysis that they do is mostly about an income tax. There's no mention. There's one use of the word permanent fund dividend in the entire piece, fairly long piece. One use of the permanent fund dividend, but that's not even in the context of the fact we're using the fiscal tool, the revenue tool, right, with the largest adverse impact on the overall economy. No analysis of who pays. No analysis of who's paying now, middle and lower income Alaska families. No analysis of who would pay under a sales tax, middle and lower income Alaska families largely. And really no analysis of who pays under the income tax they propose. They just sort of skip over the whole who pays question and just say, we really need, if you're going to do a tax, we really need a sales tax to make sure basically the top 20% are protected. So it's interesting reading for somebody that does this work on a regular basis. Interesting analysis, but it has no relevance to Alaska because it doesn't talk about the permanent fund dividend and the adverse impact that's having, and talk about alternatives to the permanent fund dividend, and because it doesn't analyze who pays under the approaches that they're proposing.
Well, I think that's the one thing that's missed. I mean, that's one thing that you can go back and say that ICER has hit on repeatedly is the adverse economic impact of the taking of the permanent fund, that it has the largest adverse impact on the Alaskan economy and families directly. That it is a tax, that it is taking, and as you pointed out, from children and families, and especially those who can least afford it. And people should be up in arms about it. And either they're not, or we're just not seeing the proper reporting on what people are thinking about this.
Well, part of it, Michael, is it's studies like this that just look past it. I mean, this is the perfect study. Economic implications of an Alaska income tax or its alternatives. Well, one of the alternatives, and the alternative we happen to be using, is permanent fund dividend cuts, PFD cuts. That's the revenue alternative we're using. That has the largest adverse impact on middle and lower income Alaska families. If you're going to analyze Alaska revenue alternatives, and maybe part of the problem here is this is a DC group as opposed to an Alaska group, but if you're going to analyze Alaska revenue alternatives, you've got to look at the one we're using now, which is PFD cuts, taxes on middle and lower income Alaska families, and start from there. When we get studies like this that don't even mention the PFD, don't analyze the impact of the PFD, don't look at who's paying Alaska's revenue now, then the press, who doesn't dive into this deeply, the press just sort of overlooks the PFD. Oh, well, we're talking about a debate here between an income tax and a sales tax. So that's what we got to write our story about. It completely, it sends everybody off spinning in a direction that's not realistic and not very productive, because that's not the reality we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Brad Keithley is our guest, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will continue this number 2, this new report from the Tax Foundation, and then we'll get into number 3, which I really want to get into, which is the new thrust of it seems like almost everybody's campaign has to do with education spending, K-12 spending. We have to increase it. We must. Otherwise, you just don't care. That's kind of the threat. We got more coming up. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Except that's not what Brad said. Harold says, I know, I shouldn't even entertain it, but
I'm not going to respond to Harold, so you can say it, but I don't expect anything back from me.
Brad says the PFD is income for the government, except that's not what he said. You hear exactly what you want to hear sometimes. Brad, we look at this and that's what kills me, is that nobody is addressing the fact that this has, and you and I have been hitting on this since 2014, that any taking of the permanent fund has the largest of all the levers that they could pull as governments, as leaders, as legislators, all the levers that they could pull to help fund or fix shortfalls or revenues or anything else. The one lever that has the largest adverse impact and the most impact on the economy, 1, and 2, on Alaska families, is the taking of the permanent fund. And they all go, oh, yeah. I remember in 2014, we were asking the question of candidates. We were asking the question, do you support ICER's approach of a sustainable budget that we should be no more than $4.1 billion in spend, and that we should be avoiding taking the permanent fund because it has, oh, yes. They all said, yes. We all believe in that. And the next thing you know, it's 4.5, 4.6, $4.7 billion, and they're taking the permanent fund. Nobody's talking about what has the largest impact on the economy and people. It's all about, well, government spend's got to be protected. Don't you? Why do you hate children? Why do you hate roads? Why do you hate people being safe and being able to read? That's kind of the answer.
Here's my theory on that, Michael. The 2 biggest studies And frankly, the last major studies on the issue were in 2016 and 2017. 2016 is the ICER study. 2017 is the ITEP study, Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy. Those were the two big studies. They got a lot of press at the time, but there's not been any big studies since on the issue, and so there's nothing new for the press to latch onto and to talk about and to ask candidates about. You have to go back to the 2016 and the 2017 studies, which are still valid. I mean, it's the same economic drivers now than as they were then. They haven't changed. They haven't changed at all. They're sort of universal. But there's no new study to come out. Now, why isn't there a new study? That's because government hasn't commissioned a new study. The 2016 study was done at the request of the administration, then Governor Bill Walker's administration, who then ignored it. But it was done at the request of the administration, paid for by the administration. And the 2017 study was done at the request of the legislature, when the legislature was considering various fiscal options. The Niels Andreasen, when he was at the Institute of the North, sort of continued on by having the guy who did the 2017 ITEP study talk at various forums and continued to keep the issue alive and sort of renewed that issue along the way. But now Niels is over at the Alaska Municipal League, and guess what? They're not talking about it much anymore. Right. Because doesn't serve their interest. They want to take, just like every other government body, they want to take that easy money out of the permanent fund dividend. Easy because the legislature can just do it without the governor getting involved. They just want to take that easy money out of the permanent fund dividend and use it for local government as well, but through grants from the state government down to local government. So we haven't had. It's been you and me and others, and some candidates, certainly Mike Schauer and others. But we haven't had the study that the press can latch onto and report. Instead, we've gotten these series of studies like from the Tax Foundation, which says, oh, the issue is really between sales tax and income tax, and the issue isn't anywhere near between the sales tax and the income tax. We've got the permanent fund dividend tax that is staring us in the face and affecting us every day. So you got these studies that are either irrelevant. They're focused on things that aren't happening, or you've got studies that, or you've got agencies that just aren't pursuing those studies anymore. So there isn't anything new for the press to latch onto. When you have Mark Sabatini from the Juneau Empire, when you have Ira Samuels, when you trade out these reporters and you get new local reporters reporting on the thing, they don't have any history with these issues. Nat Hertz, who wrote the 2017 article on the ITEP report, did sort of still raise that issue along the way when he was still writing for the ADN. But now that he's gone freelance, you don't get any of that stuff out of the ADN because they're new reporters and there isn't anything new for them to latch onto. So that's my theory on why there's been radio silence about this issue. It's because they don't have a document from government or from a government sponsored study that's really analyzing the issue anymore.
Right. Donna drops one in the chat room, her bomb for the day. Here's a study. Government spending is a drain in the economy. Private spending rolls through the economy and creates jobs and economic growth. This is just an argument that we've had for many years about the number of times money rolls in an economy versus public versus private. We've got to get that money into the private economy. That's where creation happens, not consumption. Right? I mean, that's all right. I'll let you comment on that. I'll let you comment on that and start with that on the other side. Okay. All right. Brad Keithley, our guest, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the Michael Duke Show. Here we go. All right, we're continuing with Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. We were just talking here in the chat room about monies and running in the economy, and Donna Ardwin, who happens to be listening to the show, dropped a gem in the chat room that said, here's a study. Government spending is a drain on the economy. Private spending rolls through the economy and creates jobs and economic growth. And Brad, this is what I've been saying for years. It's pretty obvious to anybody who's really paying attention. Government is a net consumer, not a producer. The private sector is the production side. That's what, all government does is really consume. They may have some short-term production in creating things like, infrastructure and things, but those are all very short-term. The only way you get long-term continuous production of wealth is from the private economy. And this goes right back to the whole idea of the number of times a dollar turns in the public versus the private economy.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with that. I mean, I think that's correct. We were talking about, in the context of that, we were talking about studies and the lack of studies comparing the cuts in the permanent fund dividend to other revenue options and the impact of cuts in the permanent fund dividend compared to those other revenue options. And there was one, I mean, there was a study that pointed out exactly what Donna just pointed out, that she helped sponsor during the beginning of the Dunleavy administration. It was from the Battelle Institute in Ohio. But even that study got drawn into the debate between sales taxes and income taxes, and spent a lot of its time. It didn't just focus in on that one issue about government being a drain. It got focused on, well, if government's going to be a drain, if government needs revenue,
right,
where does that revenue come from? And then it focused on the sales tax versus income tax, and sort of went down that road. So even the studies that try to make that point get drawn into the debate about who pays, and don't get drawn into the debate about how we ought to fund this whole, but don't do a study that includes the permanent fund dividend cut. So you don't see all the revenue options at once in one study. You're just seeing little slices that people want to advocate for, like Tax Foundation does with sales taxes here. Little slices of studies that sort of focus on what they want to advocate for. If we're going to have revenues, it ought to be a sales tax, not an income tax. Here's the one other thing I want to say about the Tax Foundation study. What's intriguing to me is that the Tax Foundation has been a big advocate of going to a flat tax, and part of the report, part of Jared's report in the Tax Foundation study, is to talk about the number of states that have been converting from a progressive income tax to a flat tax, and it truly is a wave among conservative governments, Republican governments, to be converting their previously progressive income taxes to a flat tax. And Jared talks about that being a good thing, and it is a good thing because it doesn't, PFDs are bad because they push cost to middle and lower income Alaska families. Progressive income taxes are bad because they push disproportionate cost to top 20%. The flat tax takes a proportionate amount from everybody across the board. Everybody has the same stake in the game. So Tax Foundation's been a big advocate of that. Tax Foundation talks about it in this, but they don't talk about it in an Alaska context. They talk about it as in this context. They say, well, progressive income taxes are bad. Even states that still have income taxes agree with that. They're going to a flat tax, but what's even better than that is a sales tax. And they don't stick on flat tax and talk about and he doesn't stick on flat tax and talk about flat tax as an alternative for Alaska, as we've talked about for a long time. So there's almost, as I was reading through it, I was going, okay, where'd it go?
Ball went right by you, swung and you missed. That was it right there.
We had a flat tax. We have a flat tax. They're good things. Arizona's adopting it. Oklahoma's looking. Everybody's moving toward a flat tax. It's great. And then it disappears from the page. We go on to how much better sales taxes are. So until we get a study that goes back to the basics and looks at the fact that Alaskans today are paying for government through a PFD tax, a tax on their PFD that's shoving most of the cost of middle and lower income Alaska families, until we have a study that starts at that reality and then builds from there, we're going to continue to go through this cycle of sort of meaningless, useless. Oh, that's interesting, fun to read. Put that on the shelf. I mean, we're not, and the press is going to go through cycles of, we're not talking about sales taxes or income.
What exactly are we talking about here? Right. Exactly.
Until we get somebody that focuses on the PFD, starts the conversation at what the reality is on the ground today, we're not going to have a study that's going to be worth a lot or get a lot of attention or be worth talking about for long periods of time on the show.
Let's move on to number 3. I really want to get onto this, which is the new battle cry of all the campaigns that are business as usual, the Republicans, the Democrats, the business as usual Republicans. Well, what I should say is the pro-government people versus the pro-private sector people is it. And the battle cry has become education and the BSA, and don't you care about the children? And I believe our schools are worth fighting for. That's Zach Field's newest piece, and another opinion about benefits and pensions, and this is the new battle cry.
It is. It is. If you look across the campaigns, I hadn't done this analysis until this past week, but if you look across the campaigns, there are a huge number of teachers running for office up in Fairbanks, down in Sitka, in Anchorage. I mean, there's a huge number of teachers or people who are prioritizing education in their campaign pitches that are running for office. And we're beginning to see, you remember back in 2014 when Sean Parnell was running for governor and all we saw were ADN articles, or Alaska. Yeah, it was ADN at the time. Alaska Dispatch articles about the National Guard crisis, and what's the governor doing about the National Guard crisis? Well, all of a sudden we're seeing all these stories about the $60 million shortfall in the Alaska school district, and about all these teachers who are leaving the state because we don't have a defined benefits program, we don't have a pension program for teachers, and that's building. If you watch it, if you start looking at it from that angle, that's building up to be the big campaign issue as we go into the last 2 or 3 weeks of this campaign. And Zach Field's opinion piece from yesterday in the ADN is sort of the poster child for that, right? I mean, I had snippets of it that we were going to talk about that had built up over the past week, but Zach Fields has sort of brought it all together and just sort of plop. And basically what Zach is saying, you want to close that $60 million deficit without having to increase property taxes, or without having to close your kid's school, or without having to end sports programs or ban programs, or just go down through the list. If you want to close that $60 million deficit, what you need to do is elect Democrats or independents who are Democrats in disguise, because they're going to go to Juneau and they're going to increase the BSA. And by the way, so what this other op-ed does, by the way, while they're there and while they're worrying about education, let's just go ahead and give defined benefits to teachers also. It'll be a little add-on as it comes through committee. So what we're seeing is this build up, just like the Sean Parnell National Guard issue in 2014. What we're seeing is this buildup of stories about the school district, and this buildup of stories about teacher pensions and the critical role that teacher pensions play in retaining teachers in Alaska. We're seeing the buildup of these stories as we approach the election. And then you're seeing candidates, if you follow on Twitter or you just follow their comments in the newspaper or just listen to their stock speech, then we see the candidates going, and we've got to do something about the Anchorage shortfall, or else Johnny's school's going to get closed and his band program's going to get shut down, and Julie's sports program is going to be cut. We're going to cut women's programs first, and Julie's sports program is going to be cut, and you don't want that. Your property taxes are going to go up. So let's do this. Let's elect me, the good old solid independent candidate. Let's elect me, and I'll go down to Juneau, and by gosh, we'll increase the BSA, and we'll protect Johnny's school. We'll protect little Julie's program. Right. And that's where we're going on this.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's because we've seen that from some of the candidates on this very program talk specifically about that. Almost every Democratic candidate that we've had, and a few of the independents and a few of the business as usual Republicans have all said, well, we've got to really look at this BSA. We've got to increase this because, education, they haven't been funding education. They haven't been funding. You would think that they have been taking all the dollars from it. They haven't been funding education. Now, they never talk about the fact that while the BSA has not been adjusted since 2016, 2017, there has been exponential amounts of money, gobs of money that have been poured down on top of the BSA that has to do with mismanagement. They don't talk about the overall declining enrollment. And oh man, we're out of time. I just looked at the clock and realized I want to rant about this, but I can't because we're up against the break. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Thanks for the blood pressure raise this morning. I appreciate you coming on board.
Michael, as always, thanks for having me.
Wow. It's insane, folks. It's insane. Of course, we haven't been funding children. That's why, of course, the scholastic achievements are so low, and 1 in 4 don't even graduate because we haven't spent billions of dollars on school systems in this state. The Michael Duke Show continues. Your phone calls up next, right here. Common Sense, Liberty Based, Free Thinking Radio. All right, Brad, I'm going to rant for a second. This is insane. I mean, again, they treat it. That's exactly what they say. Well, the BSA hasn't been adjusted since 2016, and so we're underfunding the schools. The billions of dollars you put, the BSA is the starting point. You have poured billions of dollars into the school system since 2016, and you have, again, they don't talk about the declining enrollment rates, that enrollment rates are going down, and that the budgets are going up. They're not talking about those inverse, graphs at all. And they're like, well, no, we should get more, but you have less students. But we should get more because we're not getting the achievements that we need. You have less students and more money now. How is that going to fix it?
You know what the real irony is about this, Michael? The real irony is that pitch, education's underfunded. We're having low performing students. We're going to have to close schools. We're not going to be able to construct new ones. That pitch is really focused a lot on the top 20%. It's really focused a lot on families that are in businesses or run businesses that are dependent upon the education system to produce qualified graduates to continue to run those businesses, or families that really focus on school for their kids. All families do, but the top 20% think they focus on it a lot more than anybody else. And here's the subtlety of it. And we can do it all with PFD cuts. So you don't have to pay for it. So vote for us. We'll spend more on the things that you think are important, and on the things that make your business run better, the things that you tell the pollsters are important to having a good business condition here in Alaska. Vote for us. We'll do that. And you won't have to pay for it because we're going to do it through PFD cuts. It is horrible. It is horrible. Right. Zach Fields is the worst at that. Zach Fields is the quintessential limousine liberal in Alaska. Give me all this government, give me all this spending, but don't make me pay for it.
Right.
I mean, my gosh, my wife and I have a $250,000 income. I don't want to pay any of that for it.
Right.
Let's just use PFD cuts for it.
Right.
And it's and the disconnect between the pitch of spend more, but you don't have to pay for it. It's just it drives. That's what drives me over the wall. That's what drives me to rant.
Yeah, no, I mean, and again, we're seeing more and more of this. Like I said, with every candidate that was an independent or a business as usual pro-government spend, Democrat or Republican, it all was about how we've got to adjust this BSA. Our kids need it. Our kids need this. And then, oh yeah, by the way, we also need a defined benefits program because, they're just not taken care of well enough. Which again, it's a disaster in the making. But unfortunately, like you said, some people just, it's for the children. Oh, well, we better take care of it then. Some of the verbiage that Zach used in this piece though, it just infuriated me. What did he said? How did he put it? The talking about, I actually highlighted it. Where is it? The malicious campaigns against school bonds. He said, the malicious campaigns against school bonds, because property owners are tired of being taken to the trough and drowned yet again. Because they're not going to take their licks like you normally. What do you care? It's only a few bucks per $100,000 of your house, so you should just do it. The malicious campaign. People are tired. That's not a malicious campaign. People are frustrated and tired with this, and they're seeing that the system is. I mean, they may not be able to explain it, but they know in their hearts that the system is fundamentally broken. Something's wrong, and that's why they do it. It's not a malicious campaign. It's that people don't want to pay for it anymore.
And here's the subtlety of Zach's pitch. Vote for me, vote for Democrats, and we'll take care of it because we'll use PFD cuts to pay for it. We'll do all these great things. We'll increase the BSA, we'll increase, spending on schools, we'll increase or we'll go back to the standard on reimbursement of school bonds. Vote for me and we'll do all that. And you won't have to pay for it.
Right.
And that's just that's the part that drives me over the edge. I mean, that the unfairness, the inequity, the hurt to the Alaska economy of that pitch. And then, you talk about business as usual Republicans. Well, yeah, we can't oppose education. We can't oppose spend. But we don't have to pay for it, right? I mean, we can use PFD cuts for it, right? So it's okay. I can say I'm supporting education. Then I can say I'm supporting an increase in the BSA as long as I don't have to pay for it.
Oh God, it's just so painful to watch. Somebody said something earlier in the chat room about how is it so obvious to most of us, and there's just a few that continue to. Here it goes. This is Herder. It never ceases to astound how what appears as so completely self-evident is so elusive to some minds. And I don't know if it's elusive or just the disingenuousness of, we're going to say the quiet part out loud. And you're going to, it blows my mind, Brad. Just blows my mind. Final thoughts before I let you go here.
Well, that's how they built government. They're going back to Bill Walker. That's how Bill Walker built government. I'm going to continue to fund government. I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to continue to fight for education, for the university and all that, but you don't have to pay for it.
Yeah.
To the top. That's the whole thing that's going on.
And look at me.
Pitch that's going on.
And look at me. I jumped on the grenade for you. I did it for you. I did it for you. I'm not looking for anything except for another term. I did it for you. Feel for me. Yeah.
Keep Alaska competitive, folks. I did it for you. I didn't raise it. I didn't raise all taxes. You didn't want me to raise all taxes. I didn't raise taxes on you. Exactly. You millionaires.
It's all about us.
I made them. I made them. Get this. I made middle and lower income Alaska families pay for all of it. It's just it. And Zach's right in there. So that's what we're hearing. Got to spend on the schools. Got to spend to retain teachers. But you don't have to pay for it.
I love it. All right, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Thank you, my friend.
Michael, as always, thanks for having me.
Folks, we're out of time. We got to go here. The Michael Duke Show continues. Hour 2 dead ahead. Thanks for calling the call-in line of the Michael Duke Show.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Across the state of Alaska on this your favorite radio station and or FM translator, and around the world at michaeldukeshow.com on the internet. That's right. We've got the links up right now for the audio only live stream. All of our social media links and everything up there where you can watch us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Thank you for coming on board and joining us. It is the Michael Duke Show, hour 2 of the big radio show. And I think it's time to open up the phone lines. What do you think? I think it's time for us to bring on some phone calls and to talk with you for just a little bit here. We're going to be joined in just a few moments by Chris Story, the man from Homer, who's going to give us our weekly life coaching lesson, a little bit of an uplift, the positive segment for the week, the positivity segment for the week. Meanwhile, we would like to open up the phone lines and take some calls at 907-433-3150, 907-433-3150 if you would like to call in and sound off on anything that Brad just talked about. I want to continue to rant for just a second about this whole thing with the education funding, because again, going back to this opinion piece from Zach Fields, one of the things we were just talking about in the break is some of the verbiage and some of the some of the things that are said in this article where, Zach Fields is talking about the Anchorage School District confronting critical needs for deferred maintenance and an operating budget shortfall. First of all, The fact that they're facing critical needs for deferred maintenance is a lack. I mean, piss poor planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on my part, right? That's the old axiom. When prior planning is bad, doesn't mean that it's an emergency on my part because you failed the plan. And here we have confronting critical needs for deferred maintenance. Well, that's because you deferred the maintenance and spent the money on something else that you thought was more important. And now you've discovered that no, that maintenance was actually important after all. And then he goes on to talk about this is a result from malicious campaigns against school bonds. That's what he's blaming the deferred maintenance and the budget shortfall on, is malicious campaigns against school bonds. Now, I have been fighting against most school bonds in my life for the last 20 years. I have pointed out the problems with them. All it does is it rewards bad behavior. In Fairbanks specifically, we had some serious issues with deferred maintenance and everything else, and always coming back to the school bonds to say, oh, it's free money. What does it matter? It's free money. I mean, we only have to pay 10 or 20%, although sometimes we have to pay 100% in some years. But, it doesn't really matter because it's all free money. And all I said is that it rewards bad behavior. If they've got things where they're going to defer maintenance on schools and then eventually just bond for it down the road, you have rewarded that bad behavior instead of making them pay for the maintenance on the facilities as it comes up. We struggled really hard. One of the things that I was most proud of in the assembly before I left the Fairbanks Assembly was that we had finally mandated that any new construction required to have a 10-year fiscal note on it that talked about the finances of how they were going to pay for the maintenance and upkeep of these buildings in the long run. Because they were always about, oh, let's build a new building. It'll be great, man. And just think about it. The stimulus for the economy, the construction industry, everybody will good. The kids will benefit, and it'll only cost you $12 or $15 or $20 million. Let's just do that. And of course, never a discussion on what it's going to cost to heat and light and power and repaint and replace roofs and upgrade wiring and do all these other things that any other private industry or private citizen would have to do to their facilities. Never a discussion on that. So they'll just bond for it down the road, and then we'll pay for it then. And then it got to the point to where they were talking about replacing school. At one point, Nordale School in Fairbanks had a bond package that they had just passed, I think, 10 years prior. It was a 20-year bond, so they were still paying on the bond. And they went ahead and convinced the people to bond for another school in its place. They knocked down the old school, razed it to the ground, and built another one right next to in the parking lot where the other one was. So we were still paying bonds on a school that no longer even existed for upgrades that we'd just done 10 years. I mean, it's insane. That's not a malicious campaign against schools. What it is people realizing that what you're doing is not right and not working. Then he goes on to talk about how in the 1970s, Alaska was the best place in America to teach, and it had one of the best education systems. Well, it was the best place to teach because we were so awash in money, we could do anything we want. We were so flush with money. I mean, there was just things flying around all over the place. Of course, then the 80s and 90s came in, and he said, oh, the budgetary volatility of the 80s and 90s destabilized education fundings. Well, that's because the entire economy was in turmoil because we had just gone from being totally flush to being totally busted. Not to mention the S&L crisis and everything else. None of this happens in a vacuum, folks. None of these things happen just because we decided today that we're going to destabilize education funding. And then he goes into this little diatribe about the history of public education in the United States. And he brings up at the time, reactionaries opposed public education, ranging from the opposition to women's literacy to continue public education would undermine Jim Crow systems of apartheid. I mean, anybody who opposes education at any form is obviously misogynistic or racist. That's the implication. Right? It is just insane. The whole crux of the matter is the Anchorage School District will soon release school closure proposals and will also be forced to consider increases to class size, elimination of sports, music, and immersion programs, but only if the legislature doesn't increase educational operating funding next year. That's the crux of it right there. Pay for education, or we're cutting your music programs, we're cutting your sports programs, we're cutting. I mean, again, no mention about the fact that the education administration and overhead is on an arc like this, and that the spending is on an arc like this, and I'm pointing upwards, folks, for those of you who are on the radio, and that the enrollments are like this, going down. They're on a decline and have been for the last 10 years. So we have fewer students with higher expenditures, and you're justifying to say what we really need is even more expenditures to be able to say, I mean, this is it. This is it right here. And this is the kicker. For the last 4 years, Alaska and Anchorage have lost population as vetoes have damaged our school systems. That's the reason why people moved out. Not because of the recession that was prior to the pandemic, not because of the recession, not because of the pandemic itself, not because of any of the other issues. This was all because we've damaged our school systems. That's why people have moved out of Alaska and Anchorage. I mean, is it just me, or are you just like, Anchorage and Alaska have lost populations as vetoes have damaged our school system?
That was just BS.
I mean, it's the whole thing. The whole thing right there. That's it right there. The whole thing is just... And this is, you can hear it. This is the battle cry for so many candidates now. Les Guerra we had on, Cliff Grow, Andrew Gray, all of these people are talking about that same thing. We've got to do that. So, this whole thing is so astonishing to me that this is where we come to. We have declining enrollment. We have exploding administration and overhead. We have an increased amount of funding. We've spent billions of dollars on education over the last 10 years in this state. And we still scrape the bottom of the barrel scholastically in achievement. We still have only a 76%. We've gone up 2 or 3 whole points since Sarah Palin was governor. 2 or 3 whole points to 76% graduation rate, meaning 1 in 4 still don't graduate. And oh, by the way, those that do graduate, most of them still have to take a remedial math course to be able to take standard 100 level math classes in college. Why? What are we getting? And what are we getting? Not to mention the fact that today you look at all the, and of course the pandemic really opened people's eyes to a lot of this stuff. You saw what was going on. You saw how hard it was. And now we come back to it and we can't even get the kids to school anymore. The bus situation and everything else. And what we really need, it's all your fault because you didn't want to give a school bond. It's all your fault because you don't support legislators who want to buff education. It's all your fault. This is where we're at, folks. This is going to be the argument for the rest of this election cycle. You could see it. It's going to be BSA increase and defined benefits for teachers. That's the argument. They're going to stick with it. And if you disagree, if you don't support it, well, in Zach Field's opinion, you're like those people who opposed public education in the beginning. You're a misogynist and you're a racist because you didn't want women to be able to read. I don't want them women to be able to read. They shouldn't be able to read. They should be making me a sandwich in the kitchen. That's what they should be doing. She don't need to be no reading. Jeez. Or it's going to undermine Jim Crow. So, of course, if we oppose education, we are one of those two things. Narrow-minded opponents of public education didn't want to take children out of the mines, the cotton fields, and the factories where they're near free labor. We want to put children back to work in the... Yeah. All right. Well, okay. You know what I say to that? Homeschooling and self-education is not as hard as people think, and that's what people have discovered. That's what people have discovered. But again, the silver lining to the pandemic is that it's not that hard to teach your own children. It's not that hard to get involved in a school program like IDEA or Raven or Cyberlinks or Frontier or one of these other ones. It's not that hard. And in fact, it's a lot more rewarding. And in fact, your children will do better. Your children will do better. That's what has been discovered, and that's why I think you're going to see a bigger push for things like backpack funding and some of these other things. And the teachers and the education establishment and the unions, they will squawk and you are defunding us, you are taking money, it's unfair, we shouldn't have to compete with blah, 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 blah. I don't care what you think. You know what I care about? My children. I care about my children. And I care about their education and getting the best bang, the best ROI, the best return on investment. And there have been so many discoveries since the pandemic of people being able to homeschool or use learning pods, learning groups, where if you can't homeschool your kids, you can still put them in a group of kids who are being homeschooled by one person. I know one family where they both work, but they basically do the schooling at night with their child when they come home from work in the afternoon, and they sit down and they do 2 or 3 hours worth of schooling with the kid. That's whatever it took. It was the ultimate flexibility. That's the bottom line. We need another choice, and we need to take it. That is the bottom line. All right. Well, no phone calls, but that's fine because we got to go. We're going to come up against it here. Chris Story is going to be joining us in a minute. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Make sure you come out and check us out on Facebook as well. Facebook.com/Michael Duke Show. We're going to be back with more right after this.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
I'm just reading this comment. Homeschool is for a minority of society. We need to have our kids socialized. Harold, my kids are some of the most socialized people. They can hold a conversation with any adult at any time. The whole socialization, it's such a myth, but you just love to perpetuate it. Support public schools. You'll never create a more competitive environment. Competition is best for our society. I never said eliminate public schools. I said give them some competition so that they have to better themselves. You just talked about higher up in the thing how you had to spend $10,000 on remedial courses for your daughter after she came out of the public school system with high grades. And now you're just like, well, no, it'll never get better. Come on. Come on. There's a disingenuousness to that just blows my mind. I've never met a person who is homeschooled that had social issues, says Jerica. Yeah. Really, me either. Nobody is awkward or unable to hold a conversation or do anything else. My kids were plenty socialized. And many of these kids attend even more social and outside functions, extracurriculars, clubs, and sports and everything else than some of the kids that are in regular school. Insanity. Okay. Well, I suppose we should get ready for our call with Brad Keithley. I suppose. Or with Chris Story, rather. We already did Brad Keithley. Terry says she thinks learning pods are brilliant. I agree. There was a story in the ADN here a few weeks back. Must have been a couple months ago now, talking about one of the teachers who was so frustrated and so disgusted by how things were handled during the pandemic that she decided to quit working for the public school system and instead created a learning pod where she was teaching kids in a smaller setting and being able to do it. And she, farmed it out and charged parents a set amount every month or whatever. And she's making a living now teaching to a small learning pod of kids. I mean, if you find out what the market wants, find a need and fill a need, and the market will make it happen. Somebody is going to have to acknowledge that the system that we have right now is fundamentally broken. And until we acknowledge that, we're just going to keep facing the same problems over and over again. All right. Chris Story, the man from Homer, is ready to join us right now. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Good morning, Michael. I'm on top of the world. How about you?
No complaints, my friend. No complaints. You all ready to dive into today's uplifting, positive moment?
Absolutely. Want to talk about the golden echo.
The golden echo. Echo.
Nice. Wow.
I know. That was pretty. That was.
Didn't even use your board to do that.
I know. I did. I know. That's called pure talent right there, buddy.
Skills.
I got mad skills. That's what I'm
homeschooled.
I'm homeschooled. I got mad skills. So how are things down in your neck of the woods these days? You guys had some weather on the Spit that was unbelievable.
Well, it was everywhere, but yeah, it was a terrific storm. But yeah, some of that footage of the ocean blown over the Spit was pretty amazing. Yeah, it's quite a storm, but we rode it out here on top of the world, Michael. We're still here, still ready to go. All right, well, hold the line, Chris. We'll be right back to you. Chris Story, the man from Homer. I love HomerAlaska.com is his website because branding is important. And he is got all of his good stuff there, including his podcast, his books, links to his show. You'll find it all there. You'll find everything there at ilovehomeraalaska.com. Chris Story is our guest. Please like and share the show. Please like and follow the show page. Please subscribe and ring the bell on YouTube and follow on Twitch and share it wherever you are. Let's get back to it. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. All right, welcome back to the program. It's Tuesday, and it's hour 2, which means we get a chance to talk with our friend, the guru of positivity, the man, the myth, the legend, the Tony Robbins of Alaska, we like to call him around here, mainly because it makes him feel good. Chris Story, the man from Homer. I love HomerAlaska.com is his website. Hey, what's happening, buddy? Everything is golden here on top of the world, Michael. Happy to be here with you, as always, to do sort of the mop-up crew after the bloodbath of you and Brad.
Yeah, no, it's always a little brutal after me and Brad, and so Chris has got to come on and take care of us. Today, he wants to talk about the golden echo. I'm sorry, I got carried away there. The golden echo, Chris. Tell us exactly what are we talking about? Give us an uplift. Give us something to, fix our bruised psyches here. What do we got to talk about?
One of my favorite movies ever, and I'm getting ready to rewatch it as we move towards the holidays, of course, is The Grinch. The version with Jim Carrey by Ron Howard is such an incredible. I love that movie. I love it all the way through. I don't care where it is, if it's just on television or I walk into a room and it's halfway through, 3/4 of the way, I'm going to sit down and watch it. And one of my favorite scenes is where Jim Carrey as the Grinch is hollering into the abyss. And everything, the echo comes back repeating everything he's saying until he decides he's going to trick the echo and say, I'm an idiot. And then the echo comes back, you're an idiot. I love that scene. And I was just thinking about that the other day, that, life is like that. We get what we put out into the world. It echoes back to us. Success is an echo of what you're putting into the world. Likewise, poverty is the same, is an echo of what you're putting into the world. Your health is an echo of what you're putting into the world. So if starting with the way you think and the thoughts that you allow yourself to hold, we have too many, 60, 70, 80,000. I've heard all the different numbers of thoughts per day. You can't control all of them. But when you find yourself putting a thought out into the world, or heaven forbid, a statement into the world that is negative, expect it to come back negative. It's not going to flip flop and come back positive. It's not going to flip flop and come back as some great return, some golden echo of, oh my God, my negativity is coming back in the form of positivity. No, it just doesn't work that way. That's the law of the universe, and the law of the golden echo is what you put out is what you're going to get back.
Right. It's the seed. You're planting the seed, and you're planting the seed in your little wet-wired computer, your brain, and it's going to attempt in its base way to try and manufacture and make true what it is that you're saying. You're programming it. You are saying, again, those echoes come right back to you. I remember an old, there was a talk that somebody gave one point about, being angry, being upset, being discouraged or down. And the guy said, I challenge you to stand in front of a mirror for 5 minutes and look yourself in the eye in the mirror and say nothing but, I'm happy. I'm excited. I've got this. He goes, for 5 minutes. He goes, just spend 5 minutes doing it. And then tell me if you don't feel better when you come away from, he goes, you're going to feel ridiculous, but just do it. Just look yourself in the eye. And for 5 minutes, just say the good things about yourself, about your situation, about everything else. And you'll be amazed. It is programming. That echo that comes back is, oh, I could never do that. Well, why? Why couldn't you never do that? Oh, I could never achieve that. I could not have your kind of dedication. I could not do this. I'm amazed at the number of people who say things like that.
Programming is exactly right. Or are you being programmed? And I think it's not just a matter of, maybe you're not putting fear into the world. Maybe you're not putting anger out through your social media or into every conversation you participate in. Maybe you're not suggesting those fears into the world, but you're allowing them to occupy your mind and be programmed by 24-hour news cycle we find ourselves in, made to order. It's very much like, I just reread 1984. I think it was last year I finished it just to reread. I hadn't read it since high school, and it's like I wanted to reread that and think about the whole concept of, oh, we're no longer at war with the Eurasians, we're at war with this group, and no, we're not anymore. Now they're allies with them, and we're at war with these. And it's like, oh, we are just living out that Orwellian life of, never mind the 85 billion in equipment and weapons of literal mass destruction we left in Afghanistan. Forget now that that's last quarter. We're focused on the billions we're sending to Ukraine. We're focused on the threat of the precipice of World War III. And if we have to pay attention, Michael. We have to pay attention to these things. But if we allow our minds to be programmed such that this is all we pay attention to, we'll pay with our health, we'll pay with our wealth. We'll constantly be in the lower 80, 20, 2, 3, 1%, whatever that you and Brad were talking about, that are bearing, whether you believe it or not, that they're bearing the greatest burden due to this PFD cut. Look, it's your economy that I think you should focus on. You pay a little attention to what's happening, of course. Be aware, be a good steward of your vote when you go to cast it, but don't cast your future to the winds and fortune of what you're being told from the government, from the news media, from social media. The echo is golden if you're putting something worthwhile out into the world. And so I just encourage us all to focus on our own economy, not to the extent that we don't help our neighbor or that we're concerned with the people that need some charitable goods. Of course not. What I'm saying is, you cannot affect the overall economy. You cannot control as to which billions we'll spend this year in Alaska for our 750,000 populace. You can't control that. You can control what you earn, and you can control what you're putting out into the world, and it will reciprocate back. It will. It has to. It's a law of reciprocity. It has to come back. So the golden echo is essentially what you put out into the world is going to come back to you. So be careful about what you're putting into the world, but also be careful about what you're letting the world dump into your mind. Right. You have complete control over that.
You are hung by the tongue, snared by the words of your mouth. Is that not the essence of what you're saying here?
Well, I'm thinking, it's your thoughts as well. The thoughts that you're allowing to occupy your mind, uh, and are you focused on where you want to be, or are you so focused on the station of life that you're at that you can't see tomorrow, or do you spend too much time thinking about what life could be like or would be like tomorrow that you're not taking care of business today? And so, I guess maybe my ultimate point is just simply to remind myself, if nobody else, because that's what I started thinking about this was the thoughts that I've got towards neighbors, friends, family in the world, or enemies. That's all going to come back to me. You got to be very careful about what you allow to occupy your mind, because those thoughts will multiply and come back to you. And we all will succumb to some negativity, some hurdles and obstacles that are out of our control. We can't control whether this obstacle in health sometimes comes up. Maybe it's completely out of your control. But at the same time, Dr. Martin Seligman is sort of the father of positive psychology and optimism, in from a psychological standpoint, not just self-help, but like literal scientific study of psychology. And he realized about 15 years into his very, very long career that, wait a minute, I want to improve people's lives. I need to start focusing on people that are succeeding mentally and that are optimistic and that are healthy and biologically advanced versus those that are negative. So if you study poverty, you're going to get more of it. If you study wealth and opulence and abundance, you're going to get more of that. What you think about and what you put out into the world is going to come back to you multiplied. Period.
But Chris, there's so many things that are bad. I mean, the election and the thing and the Democrats and the spending bill and the thing, and these are all bad, and it's all going to be. What do you say to people?
Actually, it's not just Democrats too, by the way, Republicans. But still, they're all on my list right now. But I say, what can you control, and are you doing what you can do? Did you get out the vote? Did you offer to pick up 3 or 4 people that you might think, I'm not sure they're going to go to the polls this election? You know what? Why don't I offer to pick them up? Did you do what you could do, or are you doing what you can do to impact even your local elections? Or is that, I'm not worried about that. I'm too worried about what's happening in Washington, D.C., in the swamp. Are you so concerned about the economy and the waste within government that you're not even focused on your own economy? And are you just putting out more thoughts? You guys mentioned affordable housing on your conversation with Brad earlier. And I'm here to tell you that the city of Homer just raised rents on every single dweller of an apartment, because they just raised water rates, sewer rates, and a user fee, just simply because it's available to them. It's available to them to pull the levers and say, hey, there's some pockets of money in every window.
Sure.
We'll go grab another $10 a month. That's all going to get passed down to tenants. Now, as a landlord, am I going to sit here and focus on, oh my goodness, this is the worst? No. I'm going to speak to my mayor this afternoon. I'm going to attempt to speak to my city manager, who ignores my calls persistently, but I'm going to continually call, and I'm going to do what I can. And then I'm going to let go, and I'm going to increase rents. I'm going to increase my economy and increase what I can do, but still trying to keep affordable housing tip of the tongue, top of the mind, but pushing back on, as you just said, do we need more government housing, or do we need government to get out of our housing?
Right.
So those are things that I can control, but I'm not going to let it occupy my day and my life. I'm still going to grow. I'm still going to be acquiring more properties and still going to be putting out good thoughts, and the golden echo will reply.
And I think this comes back to, in a way, from a political standpoint, because I was just throwing that out there because, I hear that all the time. But this is something that I decided a while ago, 5-6 years ago. I decided, look, I know what I can control. I can't control what goes on in Washington, D.C. I can't control, to some point I can control what happens in the state, but really I can control me, my family unit, what happens in my community councils, my road service areas, my city councils, my borough assemblies. So I decided, well, we should focus on, from grassroots, we should focus from the ground up. It starts with me. Whatever it is starts with me. Can I spread that to other people and help it from that perspective? And I think that's what you're talking about here. You can't control necessarily all these outside forces. The one thing you can control is you. And what are you throwing out into the abyss? Are you throwing out, I'm an idiot? Yes, you're an idiot. Or or are you throwing out, I can make a difference? Are you throwing out that I can succeed? Or are you throwing out that, money flows to me like water? What are you throwing out there into the abyss?
Exactly. What are you focused on? What do you allow into your mind, and what are you putting out into the world, even through your thoughts, actions, or inactions? You'd mentioned earlier, find a need and fill it. Those are 6 magic words. And so if you want to impact your economy, which is the place that everybody should start. Wallace D. Wattles wrote about this in The Science of Getting Rich in 1910. He said that it is up to you. Your economy is going to be impacted on how you think, and what you do. You have to take right action towards what you want, and what you want will begin to move towards you just like an echo. But if you're focused and so focused on lack, on poverty, on taxes are too high, don't wish taxes were lower, wish you made more money. We were talking to our accountant the other day, and she said, I'm okay with paying 25 cents out of every dollar to the United States government. However, when it approaches 50 cents per dollar, I have to take a really close look at my workload and my caseload. Well, yes, because she has complete control over her economy, she can do that. And if we just get too lost in that abyss of lack and poverty and overtaxation and underrepresentation, then you're just going to get more of that back. And I'm not saying ignore it or bury your head, but I am saying focus on what it is you can control. Read about wealth. Read about successful people. Focus on prosperity. Focus on the solutions you want to see in the world and be part of it. I hate the expression of be the change you want to see in the world, but it makes sense and rings true for a reason. It's true that what you put out into the world is going to come back to you. So again, if you focus on poverty, you're going to get more of it. If you focus on, and never should we try to stamp out poverty. It's never going to happen. There's never going to be 100% of people that are, there will be some poverty in the world. It's not your job to stamp it out. Your job is to show the way and become as successful as you can be. And that is taking care of poverty in itself.
Right. No, I mean, and again, over the last 100 years, we have eliminated, a tremendous amount of poverty in the world because of technology advances and free markets and all these other kind of things. And like you said, it's never going to be eliminated, but we have minimized it to a point to today to, from 150 years ago, people wouldn't recognize it, how far we've come. And we've got to just keep doing those things to bring, and by example, we can lead. Everyone could be led. The majority of people could be led out of poverty.
Exactly. And the number one way out is investing in your own backyard, investing in real estate, in your own and control real estate in your community, and you will stamp out poverty, not just for yourself, but for others, and improve upon the lives of those around you.
Yeah. No, it's good stuff. Chris Story, ilovehomeralaska.com. How the book's coming?
Oh, excellent. Thanks for asking. I love the accountability. I appreciate that. Coming very good. I hope to be wrapping up 2 at once, which again, as I've said before, is a mistake, and I'm trying to focus on one at a time. But it's my brain is not allowing me to just, I keep picking up the 2, the next Millionaire book and the next Jacob Mann book, and I just keep moving back and forth. But I hope to be done here in the next 14 days. That's my goal.
All right. Well, we look forward to it. We look forward to hearing it and seeing it and getting things squared away. Chris Story on the air Tuesdays and Thursdays down on the peninsula on the stations of KPEN at 1:00, I believe. And
yes.
Do you have your stream is up on your website now?
No, but the podcasts are available shortly thereafter.
Slacker. Showed you how to stream, set you all up, still don't stream. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to get you squared away. You're going to be doing it every day. So it'll be fine. Chris Story, thank you, my friend. As always, it's a pleasure to speak with you. We appreciate you. We appreciate you coming on board and joining with us today.
Thank you, Michael. My pleasure.
All right, folks. That leaves us with a segment open for whatever you want to talk about. I'm just going to open up the phone lines. Open line, open forum. Whatever you want to talk about, we'll do it right now. 907-433-3150. Get in the queue right now. 907-433-3150. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. So that is it for Chris' story. And that's it for you and me. One final segment today. Whatever you want to talk about. People are talking in the homeschool or in the chat room about homeschooling and pandemic pods and everything else, or not pandemic pods, but learning pods. They were called pandemic pods, and now they're just called learning pods. And I love that. I love that idea. I love that. I was so encouraged when I read that story about the teacher who was like, I'm done with the school system, but she's now providing a service to families that want to be able to do that. I just found that I found it awesome. I just thought that was so awesome. All right. What else you guys want to talk about here this morning? I'm just going through here. Kevin McCabe, it's a free market solution. The ideas could transfer into government monopolies, road maintenance, ambulance services, etc. I think he's talking about privatization. I got to go back and see what Kevin was talking about backpack funding. It's the only right way to fund education. The BSA has no way to add performance metrics, so let's have the free market do it. If a school is not performing, parents can vote with their feet. I don't think one necessarily plays into the other, Daniel. But why not? If you could provide ambulance service at a cheaper price for the same or higher level of service, why wouldn't you? Does it have to be owned by the government to be effective? Is that the thing? I think that's part of the stumbling block. We looked at privatization in Fairbanks at one point of various services, and there was a potential for like ambulance service and stuff like that, but people were afraid because they've been taught the whole time that government had to provide that. It wasn't, couldn't have a private sector do it, had to have government provide it. And I had to ask why. Why does government have to? Why is it only a government option? If you can do it for less money and have the same or better service, why would you not want to do that? New Zealand privatized a big chunk of a lot of their public stuff that they had over the years. Hillsdale College had a big deal on that, report on that here about 10 years ago where they talked about that. Why couldn't you? Well, because, the private company could fail. And then, so you write things into the contract that if the company fails or flusters or whatever, then the assets can revert back to some government agency if that's what we needed to do. I mean, there's all kinds of things that could work better, but we've been inundated and we've been indoctrinated that the solution to all the problems that we face today the answer is always government. Regardless of what the question is, the answer is government. And that's a problem. I believe there is a private air ambulance up here in Fairbanks. Yes, there is. There is a private air ambulance. If the government is involved, they're going to screw it up, says Terry. Yeah. I mean, that's part of the problem. Okay. I'm looking back at your comments to see if there's anything here that we should be talking about. Going back, what does grow the PFD mean? What does it mean to grow the PFD? That was Cliff Grows. That's his comment. That's his tagline for his campaign, grow the PFD. Is it the same as the Giesling the PFD? Yes, possible. It could be possible. Michael, if you summarize your comments for a column, it would be a useful commentary to submit to the media. I've attempted to write some pieces, and I know I have a newsletter and some of these things, but I always find that such a chore to try and write down. And, in fact, the last newsletter that I wrote, what I did was that I turned on voice typing or whatever, and I just started talking. And that's how I did it. Cause I find it so much easier to put my words, into speaking, right, than I do into writing. My writing is not, I always feel like I have to go back and anyway, I see what you're saying, Juanita, but that's not, it's not something that I have focused on. I was going to say it's something that I'm not good at, but I am good at it. It's just, it takes a lot more effort than just sitting down there and talking to you. Talking to you about what's going on. That's for sure. All right. I'm just going through here. Any good news? Well, you know what? That's a good question. I don't know if there's any good news. I haven't looked today. But since we don't have any phone calls yet, I will look to see if there's I'll look to see if there's some good news. See if there's anything else out there. Oh, there you go. That's a good story. And here's another one. I got a couple good news stories that I can talk about. We'll do that. Thank you, Deborah, for reminding me that sometimes we need the good news. The good news. The good news. And there's another one. Okay, we got to go. We're going to jump back into it. The phone lines are still open, so we'll see what's going on. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like and share. Here we go. Okay. Well, one final segment for this morning's program. And we get a chance to, I adjusted that and I didn't like it. We get a chance to talk about that. Whatever you want to talk about here. I'm opening up the phone lines for one final segment this morning. All you got to do is give us a call. If you want to talk about what Chris was talking about or anything that Brad was talking about or my rant earlier on about schools and bonds and indebtedness and deferred maintenance and learning pods and all that other stuff, we'd love to hear from you. 907-433-3150, 907-433-3150. If you would like to be part of the show this morning and sound off on any of the topics that we've been discussing, we would love to hear from you. In a continuation of what we were talking about with Chris, somebody in the chat room said, "Hey, what about our good news segment?" And you're not wrong. There is we do have some segments on good news that we could pick up and do. That's something that we've been doing here the last few weeks, which I think was which I think is fun. I mean, again, because they always say bad news sells. Bad news sells. But sometimes you got to feel that good news. And so we like to share those stories with you sometimes, just because you need a little bit of bright shininess out there to make it happen. So we got some good news stories if nobody decides to call in. Again, the number to call is 907-433-3150. I'm assuming the phone lines are open and working. I guess I should, whenever I don't get a phone call, I start to worry because occasionally the phone lines get broken. And I worry that something is not right with the phone systems, and I just don't know it. So I guess we'll test the phone lines and make sure that everything is up and running and ready to go. But if you want to call, or you can also drop me an email. The email address is me@michaeldukeshow.com, me@michaeldukeshow.com. So, well, apparently available at satellite. Apparently the phone lines are up and working, so we're good to go on that. So if you'd love to call in, feel free to do it. 907-433-3150. All right, so a piece of good news. Here's a good news story to put you on your Tuesday. By the way, if you're driving in the South Central area, I know Fairbanks got snow here a couple days ago, but we got a big snow dump last night in the Mat-Su and South Central area. So if you're traveling today, be cautious. Be very, very cautious. And I saw that Bill said earlier down in the Kenai, they have some black ice around there as well. It's like 30 degrees outside the studios here. So just be careful out there when you guys drive around, okay? Anyway, here's your piece of good news. A woman finally met her long-lost dad, a man that she didn't even know existed, thanks to an amateur sleuth she met on Facebook. Adriana Tyler thought she knew her father until the age of 13 when she overheard him referring to her as her stepdaughter. Since then, she wanted to know who her biological father was, but could never find out anything about him. Now, the 33-year-old mom, married to a truck driver in Pittsburgh, says she recalled, she goes, I was desperate to find my real dad. It always really mattered to me, which I find interesting. I mean, I always wonder why, if you've been raised and you didn't know you were adopted, or you didn't know that you weren't the biological child of your step parent. I don't know. I've never had that happen to me, so I guess I don't understand necessarily the need for it. But it's definitely an interesting, and I know a lot of people feel that way. So she began to search by ordering a DNA test kit, asked for some assistance from strangers running a Facebook group that helps strangers unite with long lost relatives and everything else. Out of that group, a wonderful woman called Suzanne helped her build a family tree, and after another DNA test, found her aunt, who was 47-year-old Kathy Johnson. From there, they found her biological dad, a police officer who lived 1,000 miles away in Florida. And then she said she'd put her in touch with her dad. And she said, I was so nervous. How do you call someone and just ask, are you my dad? I mean, that is an awkward phone call. I guarantee you that is an awkward phone call. Adrian told SWNS News Service that Joseph Frank had no idea she'd ever been born, and was thrilled to learn that he not only had another daughter, but 2 young grandchildren. She said he found out about me. He was so excited. It was such a relief. After spending the next month texting and video calling daily, getting to know each other, Joseph traveled from Florida to Pennsylvania so they could meet in person for the first time. They met last week at a local festival near her home, and now they're already planning a family holiday. They enjoyed pizza when they had their emotional meeting. She also discovered she has 2 half-sisters who are around her age. And she said, we bonded right away. It feels good. Joseph remembered having a summer fling with Adriana's mom in the 80s while she was working on his uncle's farm. They grew close but never spoke again. He didn't even know she was expecting a baby. So it is a good story all the way around, and kind of a happy day. So meeting her long lost, thanks to friends on Facebook. That's not something you hear every day. Thanks to friends on Facebook. Because usually your quote unquote friends on Facebook are not always your friends. Let's just put it that way. So that's the good news there. All right. Coming up tomorrow on the program, what do we got? Coming up tomorrow on the show, we're going to be talking with Elijah Verhagen in the first hour of the program tomorrow. And then in the second hour, we're going to be talking with Kelly Nash. Elijah Verhagen, candidate for Senate. Kelly Nash, candidate for House in the Interior. This is up in the Fairbanks area. On Thursday, we're going to be talking with John Cunningham, and I'm trying to get David Nelson on the program as well as Jamie Allard and some others. And on Friday, we're going to have Chris Chang, Top Shot champion Chris Chang is going to be joining us, as he does every second Friday of the month. And also, again, working on having the folks from the Second Amendment Foundation call in and talk with us and chit chat. So that should be a fun time on Friday. And of course, Willie Waffle from wafflemovies.com. Now, that being said, today is Tuesday, right? So we are 1, 2, 3, we're 4 Tuesdays away from Election Day. Only 4, 5, 4, because it's the 8th. So that would be 4 more weeks away from Election Day. That's all we have right now. It's almost over, folks. It's all the race to the finish. That doesn't mean that you grow weary in well-doing. We've still got to talk to our friends and relatives. We still got to offer to, take people to the polls, educate people about, the issues and everything else. That is what we should do. Sandy is asking, when is our debate between Ruffridge and Gillum? It was going to be on Monday, but there was a conflict, so we're going to be moving it next Monday. Now we're going to move it over to Wednesday. We're going to move it over to Wednesday. So we're going to have that over Wednesday. They're going to be here for the whole show on the 19th. And we're trying to do the same thing, as I said earlier, for Mike Schauer and Doug Massey. A couple of these races that are pretty contentious. We're going to try and do that a couple times. I would love to get Bill Walker and Les Guerra and Mike Dunleavy and Charlie Pierce on the show. I just don't think that's ever going to happen. Although I am encouraged. I'm hoping that we'll be able to get Charlie Pierce back on again to talk a little bit about his campaign and where he's going from here and what his plans are. That's what we're hoping for anyway. All right. So we're out of time for today. So we got to go. But we'll keep you in the loop. Thanks for being part of it today. The Michael Duke Show continues. We got more tomorrow, 6 a.m. Make sure you come out and join me. In the meanwhile, be kind to one another, love one another, and live well. The Michael Duke Show. We'll see you tomorrow, folks. Have a great day. Okay. Well, nobody wanted to talk this morning. That's crazy. You had less. It's possible, says Harold. Well, yeah, but I've got to get Dunleavy and Walker on. Neither of one which have responded. I mean, we could just have Les Gary and Charlie Pierce on, maybe. I don't know. We'll see what happens. You know, Massey will never do it, says Terry. His arrogance won't allow it. We reached out to the show. We reached out to the campaign. Haven't heard back. We'll try it again. We'll see. Anyway, appreciate you guys coming on board. We will see you tomorrow. Be safe out there. It's a little slippery. We'll see you later. Have a great day.
Goodbye.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.